Hey, this is Steve Bloom, and you are listening to the Geekcast Radio Network.
You're listening to the Geekcast Radio Network. Unleash the geek in you.
Hello and welcome to Geekcast Radio, episode 94. I am one of your hosts, GCR Mike, and joining me is Optimus Solo. Hello, sir.
Glad to be here, back on the flagship show.
Yep, on the flagship show. Steve Megatron, folks, he's in TV limbo right now. I don't know. I don't know what happened to Steve.
He's in between seasons.
Yeah, he's in between seasons, or maybe he's waiting to be renewed or come back after, like, the Futurama 50 millionth time. Steve Megatron is a TV show that just will not die. He just keeps coming back and coming back and coming back.
Much like most of our podcasts.
And, yeah, he's kind of like the Twin Peaks of TV. Not really. But yeah, we're here to talk 90s television in episode 94. This is our 90s kind of spotlight thing here on GCR. We have several different topics here. I'm just going to run down those really quickly. TV transitions from the late 80s to the 90s. What were you watching in the 90s? TV water cooler talk. Favorite 90s TV theme songs and 90s comebacks. 90s TV comebacks. Comebacks. That's right. God damn it, I can't talk. And in between that, Optimus Solo has various year-by-year things. We're going to go give you 5 years of news at a time, and it's going to come in between a couple of these segments. So he'll talk about stuff year by year from 90 to 94, and then 95 to 99. Oh boy, the 90s in television. Oh God.
Good times.
Yeah. So the whole thing about TV transitioning from the late 80s into the 90s, like, everyone associates Full House with being a 90s show, but it started in 87. Like, yeah. It took up to like the third or the fourth season for it to really get its ground, so I guess 89, 90, you might say. But right. I mean, that show is one of the leading 90s catchphrases shows of the night. You got it, dude. Oh, nuts. How rude. Have mercy. Like, all of that. Oh, my Lanta. Like, all of that is attributed to Full House.
Right. I think it's more, not as far as when Full House began, as far as its first air date. I think it's more about what Full House represents, because it's much more in tune with the types of shows that we got in the 90s compared to the types of shows that we got in the 80s, at least for that genre.
Yeah.
So it seems like a 90s show because it fits more in with the likes of, Family Matters and Home Improvement and that type of show versus, the Wonder Years and Family Ties and Growing Pains and that type of stuff. So it's definitely a representation of the shift that we see kind of transitioning from the 80s into the 90s with the sitcoms.
Absolutely. And like I said, the late 80s, from 87 onwards, I mean, most of the shows that started then were transition shows. They kind of really were. You take a look at a giant Star Trek, The Next Generation.
Mm-hmm.
I had forgotten that started in 87. Until I went back and I started. I have not had a chance to actually watch any more, but few months before I met who was going to be my future wife and Karen, I had gone on Netflix. I'm like, oh, Star Trek The Next Generation is here. Oh, I kind of want to go back and see what that was like from the beginning. And I think I'm like up to episode 4 or 5 of season 1, and like, wow. Wow. And that's not.
I've been wanting to go back through and rewatch all those, but I wanted to wait until I could do something in association with that.
Yeah.
But because I've seen every Next Generation episode probably at least 3 times.
Mm-hmm.
But it's been probably, I don't know, at least a decade since I've seen any of them.
Yeah.
So I've been really go back and go episode by episode through there. But yeah, that's another kind of a show that started, yes, in the 80s, but is way more of a sign of the types of shows that we're getting in the 90s, because you didn't really have much for science fiction and fantasy pre 1990. So, I mean, you had the original Star Trek show, but that was a long time before, and it was a very different show. And you had a few things like the Bionic Woman, $6 Million Man, and some of the comic book type adaptations. But other than that, you didn't get like the Star Trek: The Next Generation is what kind of issue, or kind of set the stage for a lot of science fiction that we get in the 90s. Whether it's other Star Treks, whether it's Babylon, whether it's Stargate, whether it's all those types of things, are because of the Next Generation.
Oh, absolutely. Like you said, stuff like Stargate SG-1, Sequest DSV, even though it only lasted a few seasons. All of that stuff.
Even X-Files in a way. I mean, it's more of a little bit of a supernatural thing, but it's something that kind of will set the stage from that. I mean, the only thing that I can think of even in the 80s that would be close to that would be something like Quantum Leap. Which is also a crossover show that started in the late 80s and went into the early 90s. But other than that, there really wasn't much prior to that outside of the ones we already mentioned. So the 90s is interesting because we do see a shift in the types of shows we're getting, whether it's sitcoms like we just said with Full House, whether it's science fiction with the Star Trek: The Next Generation. And another thing, do you remember the world before Law and Order?
Yes, I do.
Because 1990 is when Law and Order debuted, and we've never had a year since that hasn't had a Law and Order or a Law and Order spinoff show. I don't think we've had a year that hasn't had at least one of those things have a new episode.
Yeah, and right now the only one that's still going is SVU.
But it was, again, another sign of things to come because, we didn't really have a ton of the cops and the lawyer type shows, and we got a ton of them in the 90s, and then it kind of really sets the stage for even more of them in the 2000s.
Yeah, before Law and Order, the only one that I could remember, and this was more 80s than 90s, I think it did transition over into the 90s because I think it went on for a few years, but the only law show I remember was LA Law.
Right. And
there was no Boston Legal, there was no this, there was no that, there was no Ally McBeal, there was no whatever.
And also when it comes to the more detective or investigative things like we get with Criminal Minds, NCIS, CSI, all that type of stuff kind of set the stage from Law and Order, because before that you had action shows, like you had your Miami Vice, or you had your those types of shows, the more action oriented, but not so much on the investigative side or the forensic side or the law side.
Yeah, you look at any of them, like MacGyver, like you just said, Miami Vice, Knight Rider, Airwolf, A-Team. They're all more
Hawaii Five-0, all that.
Hawaii Five-0. I don't want to say necessary. Well, Hawaii Five-0, I wouldn't really lump in with. Yes, it is an action show, but I'm talking about more of the Lone Wolf or the team type of shows where it's all action. Michael Knight, while he does work for the Foundation for Law and Government, he's not really he was a cop. He's not a cop anymore now that he's Michael Knight, kind of thing. Same thing with Stringfellow Hawk. He's doing super secret government work with the firm and all of that with Airwolf, and whereas Hawaii Five-0 it's two cops in Hawaii.
Yeah.
And Law and Order, it just, oh my God, that show.
Yeah.
Just, that show was just, it didn't matter when it's, obviously it does matter when it started, but, all of the varying cast members in that show, and a lot of the ones that stuck on for as long as they did, the fact that other than one of the FX movies, it was either FX or FX2, I forget which one. I think it was the first one. Jerry Orbach starred in that as a bad guy. Outside of that movie, the only thing I know Jerry Orbach from is Lenny Briscoe in Law and Order. I mean, that's what I know him as, and just wow, how long he went on, and just looking at that show. Jesse L. Martin playing Ed Green, his partner. Yeah. Jesse's now, Joe West on The Flash. When they announced that, back when The Flash started 4 years ago or something, or whatever it is now, I was like, hey, it's Ed Green from Law and Order. What's he doing in The Flash? But it was so friggin' cool.
Yeah, I agree, for sure. It's interesting, though, when you're looking at the 90s, though, because you basically have probably about the first I don't know, 90, 91, 92 maybe, maybe into 93. Those are kind of the transitions years. Those are things that have a lot of ties to still stuff that was going on in the 80s, late 80s, and then the kind of the ushering in of new stuff. So you have like the first 2-3 years of the 90s that are more like that transition period. And then it's not until probably about 93, 94 where you start to get stuff that really kind of is formulating as something you would remember specifically from the 90s. Like it's a thing of that time. It's a thing, that's representing the culture and the lifestyles of that way. And then it feels like you get even a little bit of a different thing towards the late 90s where we get a whole different breed of shows. Mm-hmm. So it's kind of interesting how it lays down because it's almost like in 3 chunks, like the earlies, the mids, and the lates have very distinct shows that are happening, debuting, etc. But it's interesting though. You're talking about. Oh, go ahead.
Well, you look at like 2 very powerhouse shows from the 80s.
Mm-hmm.
Say what you will about the man now, whatever. I still don't care. And if you want to take my opinion outside of the overall GCRN network opinion, The Cosby Show is still a show that taught me as I grew up. Yes, Bill Cosby is a monster, whatever. It doesn't take away from the character that he portrayed in a television show over almost 40 years ago now. Yeah.
Impact of that show either.
Exactly. That's my whole point about The Cosby Show. Just because he did completely fucked up and stupid shit in his personal life does not erase the fact of what that show taught us as kids. But that show ran from 84 to 92.
Mm-hmm.
So did Cheers. 2 of the biggest powerhouses of the 80s. And, out of all the characters in Cheers, folks, who would you have thought that they would give a spin-off series to? What character would you have thought that they would have done that? That started in the 90s with Frasier.
Right.
It really is.
And I'm sure that they'll have all the money they need while Sandra goes to law school. Honey, this is gonna work out.
Mom?
Yes.
I'm not going to law school.
What?
I decided not to go to law school.
What do you mean you decided not to go to law school?
Well, this is our dream, and so I'm going to get a temporary job until the wilderness store opens, and then I'll be working side by side with my husband.
Sandra, what are you saying? You have always wanted to go to law school. You've never talked about anything else.
I changed my mind.
Change it back. After all the money we spent sending you to Princeton? Sandra, you owe us $79,648.22, and I want my money now. I'm not going anywhere till I get my money. I'll take whatever she's got. Empty her pockets. I want to know now. No, I'm not having this. No.
Well, really, both of us, we have to be calm.
You calm down. If Elvin thinks that he is going to come in here and drag my baby off into some harebrained business scheme and ruin what is potentially the greatest legal mind of this century, he's going to have me to deal with. And then he can come to you for treatment.
I understand, and I agree with what you're saying, but you just said to me, why don't we give them a year, and if it doesn't work, then they can reapply. What I want to know is how is it that you get to rant and rave and I'm the one who has to be calm?
Because that is my baby in there.
But that's my baby,
no,
too.
Cliff, you don't understand, honey. You did not have that child. I had that child. I was the one who was on that table screaming, take it out. And if it takes the last breath in my body, Sandra is going to become a lawyer.
Yeah, okay. What do you want to do?
Oh, it's very simple. She'll divorce him.
Sandra is in love with the boy, dear.
Well, then you take Elvin.
I'll take him?
Yes, you take him.
What am I going to do with him?
You take him on a long trip in the country and drop him off.
Listen to yourself, Bob. You follow her to work. You eavesdrop on her calls. You open her mail. The minute you started doing these things, the relationship was over. Thank you for your call. Roz, I think we have time for one more.
Yes, Dr. Crane. On line 4, we have Russell from Kirkland.
Hello, Russell. This is Dr. Fraser Crane. I'm listening.
Well, I have been feeling sort of, depressed lately. My life's not going anywhere. It's not that bad. It's just Same old apartment, same old job. Sometimes.
Russell, we're just about at the end of our hour. Let me see if I can cut to the chase by using myself as an example. 6 months ago, I was living in Boston. My wife had left me, which was very painful. Then she came back to me, which was excruciating. On top of that, my practice had grown stagnant, and my social life consisted of hanging around a bar night after night. You see, I was clinging to a life that wasn't working anymore, and I knew I had to do something, anything. So I ended the marriage once and for all, packed up my things, and moved back here to my hometown of Seattle. Go Seahawks. I took action, Russell, and you can too. Move, change, do something. If it's a mistake, do something else. Will you do that, Russell? Will you? Russell? I think we lost him.
No, we cut to the news 30 seconds ago.
Oh, for crying out loud. I finally bare my soul to all of Seattle, and they're listening to Chopper Dave's Rush Hour Roundup. Well, the rest of the show was pretty good. It was a good show, wasn't it?
Here, your brother called.
Roz, in the trade, we call that avoidance. Don't change the subject. Tell me what you think.
Did I ever tell you what this little button does?
I am not a piece of Lalique. I can handle criticism. How was I today?
Let's see. You dropped 2 commercials. You left a total of 28 seconds of dead air. You scrambled the station's call letters. You spilled yogurt on the control board, and you kept referring to Jerry with the identity crisis as Jeff.
You say my brother called.
So I said to the gardener, Yoshi, I do not want a Zen garden in my backyard. If I want to rake gravel every 10 minutes to maintain my inner harmony, I'll move to Yokohama. Well, this offends him, so he starts pulling up Maris's prized camellias by the handful. Well, I couldn't stand for that, so I marched right into the morning room and locked the door until he cooled down. Tell me you would have handled it differently, Fraser?
Oh, I'm sorry, Niles. I didn't realize you'd stop talking.
You haven't heard a word I said.
Oh, Niles, you're a psychiatrist. You know what it's like to listen to people prattling on endlessly about their mundane lives.
Touché. And on that subject, I heard your show today.
And?
Yeah. Well, I mean, when you just look at the types of pre-1990 shows that ended in these first, 3 to 4 years, whether it was 80s shows or whether it was shows that was even longer than that. I mean, early 90s saw the ends of a lot of iconic shows. I'm just going to run down a few of them just to get your feedback on it. But some of them we've already mentioned. But you have Miami Vice, Alf, My Two Dads, Mr. Belvedere, Charles in Charge in the first year. Second year, you have the end of China Beach, 21 Jump Street, and the long-running Dallas ended in 1991. And then here's where the real transition goes, because 92 and 93 is when all the 80s shows end, basically, and then you have a ton of shows starting. So look at the shows that ended in either 1992 or 1993. Growing Pains, Who's the Boss? The Cosby Show, Golden Girls, MacGyver, Hee Haw, Night Court, Doogie Howser, Major Dad, Quantum Leap, Wonder Years, Knots Landing, Cheers, Life Goes On, Designing Women, A Different World, Perfect Strangers, and Saved by the Bell. Yeah. That's all 92 and 93 endings. So that was kind of the end of the 80s. 1992, 93 is when all of those shows left the airwaves, at least in new, as far as new episodes.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, I mean, that's crazy, and that's what kind of sets the stage for the types of shows we get, because the same types of shows that are starting those years, we have stuff like Dr. Quinn, Medicine Woman, Star Trek Deep Space Nine, Walker, Texas Ranger, The X-Files, Lois and Clark, Frasier, you just mentioned, NYPD Blue, Boy Meets World, Grace Under Fire, The Nanny, Diagnosis Murder, Mad About You, Picket Fences, Melrose Place.
And Nash Bridges.
Yeah, so that's the types of stuff that's starting and taking the place of all of those other shows that just kind of went out. Well, Nash Bridges was a little bit later.
No, it was 96.
Yeah, 96. I was talking about 92, 93.
Oh, 92, 94. Okay, yeah.
Yeah, when all those 80 shows go and then all these new shows come in, so it's kind of crazy.
Yeah, the fact that Mad About You and that, I love that show. Like, I quite literally love that show.
Me too.
What happened?
I was in the garment district, and I got run down by one of those loopy bike messengers.
Again?
She came out of nowhere. I jumped in the street to avoid getting hit by a rack of summer casuals, and the next thing you know, boom, I'm lying in a dumpster with last year's irregulars.
Calm down. You're okay now.
Well, no, I'm not. I mean, I could have died. It was a brush with death. I saw my life flash before my eyes.
What was I wearing?
I'm sorry?
What was I wearing?
Well, you weren't there.
What do you mean I wasn't there?
Well, it happens very fast, you know, and then, truthfully, I only got as far as high school.
Well, obviously, I must not be that important to you.
Well, excuse me for not thinking of you as I hurtle to my death.
If I were about to die, I'd think about you.
Well, we're about to find out.
Tell me why I love you like I do. Tell me who can stop my heart as much as you. Let's take each other's hand as we jump into the final frontier. Mad about you, baby. Yeah, I'm mad about you.
If I was to ever do a separate TV podcast outside of remote control or telecast, somehow I would find a way to do a Mad About podcasting or something.
Yeah,
like,
there's a couple shows I would do, and that's one of them.
Yeah, but like that show, the relationship that Paul and James just I can't like. There's one episode I consistently reference to everyone, even my wife. It's the episode where it's them in bed. And Murray, the dog, is chasing this fake mouse. All as you see is Paul and Jamie's bed, them in bed, Murray coming in, jumping up over the bed, running into the bathroom, and you hear a crash against the wall. Because it's letting you believe that the dog has crashed into the wall from chasing this invisible mouse.
Yeah.
It's just so funny. And yeah,
it's good stuff for sure. And some other interesting things here that we also got with the 90s transition here was in the realm of some of the non-scripted shows. Well, I guess they are still somewhat scripted, but take Saturday Night Live, for example. You can kind of look at that as a transition from the 80s to the 90s because 1990 saw a brand new cast. Yeah. 1990 is the beginning of Chris Farley, Tim Meadows, Adam Sandler, Robbie Schneider. All those guys begin in 1990. Chris Rock, that was a brand new cast in 1990. So it's really a transition from the old school Saturday Night Live to what we had growing up in our generation. Mm-hmm. So interesting stuff there for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, where to next?
I mean, if you want to go over a little bit of the news of those first 4 or 5 years.
Yeah, the first 5. So 90 to 94 in 90s television news.
Well, one thing that you're going to see here in the 90s is obviously the expansion of TV in general, because we have a ton of new channels that are making their beginnings in the 90s. So that's part of it. Obviously, the biggest change, which I know it was kind of in existence before, but the biggest thing that happened in the 90s was Fox becoming a major player. And that is very symbolic of the types of shows that we get in the 90s, because Fox is what started to break the mold and put out content that the other networks would have never put out. Yep. Other channels that started here in the first 5 years or so, we had Entertainment Television, the Family Channel, Comedy Central, Court TV, which would eventually become True TV, the Sci-Fi Channel, Food Network, Encore Stars, FX, the Game Show Network, and Turner Classic Movies. All started in those first 5 years of the 90s. So any comment on those before I say more news?
Do you know which year specifically FX started?
That would have been 94.
Wow.
According to now, some of that stuff starts in different names and different things, but as far as FX broadcasting its first show was 94.
Yeah. Wow. Because so it broadcasted its first show or its first movie?
First program.
Okay.
Regardless of what it was.
Okay, because Yeah, it would have taken them then 8 years. Yeah, from what'd you say? 90? You said 90,
94.
94. So yeah, it would have taken them 8 years or so to start their original programming. Because in 2002, The Shield debuted March 8th. I believe it's March 8th, 2002. Why I have that date bored into my mind is because and obviously this is not 2000s in television. That'll be later, but like that first episode just blew me away.
Right.
And yeah, love that show. Anyway, but yeah, so some of these other ones, like I remember E in the 90s, kind of like it was what's his name, Steve with Jules Asner, and all. What's that?
Then you had the Henson guy, John Henson, was on there, or I guess he might have been on Comedy Central, but Sci-Fi Channel too. I remember that because it was that was the re-airing of Transformers episodes on the Sci-Fi Channel. That was one of the first ways I could catch it after the 80s, but definitely interesting on some of these channels. Another thing that kind of happened in this first 5 years and kind of is another symbolic thing of the 90s was this seemed to be like the first time that networks were really trying to advertise or promote programming blocks, as far as stuff like, TGIF or, different blocks. They all came up with different names for a set of days or for certain channels. That's why we had like the Seinfeld, Mad About You, Frasier type thing. Later on we get it with Friends and Seinfeld, etc. So, I mean, they did different stuff like that. And along with that, how about some kids programming, not cartoons, but kids programming, the premiere of Snick in 1992.
Gotta love the old school Snick, because holy crap. That was where
go ahead.
Clarissa.
Yeah.
Clarissa explains it all.
Pete and Pete and Hey Dude.
And you hated Pete and Pete.
I did.
When we did that episode on the telecast years and years ago now, you hated Pete and Pete.
It's no hate.
I don't care what you say. That theme song is still cool as hell. Hey Sandy.
And we can definitely, I won't agree with that, but we can definitely agree on Are You Afraid of the Dark? That was a cool. Maybe you're not going to agree. I don't know.
All right. I liked it better when Dead Poets Society did it.
Another thing that happened, and you can blame the 90s on, I guess, is the death of the Saturday morning cartoons, which doesn't have a lot to do. We're not talking about cartoons today, but what happened in place of that was all of the programming surrounding stuff like Saved by the Bell, California Dreams, and all of those other teen shows that were starting to debut on Saturday mornings on the network. So that is something directly related to 1992, 93 area.
You talk about the channel blocking and things like that, and blocks of content.
Right.
I still to this day remember. Obviously, we all remember. TGIF was ABC's. Thank God it's Friday.
Yep.
Must See TV is either Thursday or Tuesday or whatever night NBC decided to have it on. It usually ended up being a Thursday night. Must See TV. I don't remember what Fox had as a slogan, but
there was a few of them that you could go back and try to find some of them, but there was quite a few that tried to do like little things where it was like, oh, this is our set of shows that are somewhat like they were all somewhat similar in like at least genre or something of that nature. How about I just had to throw this in because it has somewhat of a loose connection to other stuff we like here at the network, but the first Got Milk ad ever aired in 1993, and guess who it was directed by?
James Hetfield.
Michael Bay.
Oh, wow.
He directed the first Got Milk commercial in 1993, so I had to throw that in there. Last couple things here. Another thing that you can pinpoint to the 90s, how about the beginning of reality television, The Real World, 1992?
Yep.
That's when that started. And then the only other things I have real quick for you are kind of the transition in the late night game, because Johnny Carson has his last appearance on his show in 1992. And then we have, of course, the likes of Jay Leno and David Letterman and that type of stuff taking over. So that was a big thing.
When it comes to late night TV in the 90s and now, there's only two sets of hosts that I remember the most. Okay, yeah, Jay Leno, sure, great, whatever. But the two sets of hosts where it's the host and then his sidekick or whatever partner you want to call is Johnny Carson and Ed McMahon and David Letterman with Paul Schaefer.
Yeah.
Everybody else, like that whole shtick of the sidekick guy or the musician. Like, okay,
Mhm.
Jimmy Fallon today has his roots band and whatever else, and I don't know what Kimmel has. I have no idea what Colbert has on the Late Show now. But
Right.
like that whole shtick of the sidekick and then the band, or the sidekick with the band, it kind of died with Johnny. I mean,
Right.
Jay didn't really have that. It was all about Jay. It wasn't really like, I know he had a band leader person that he kind of turned to, but like the only person that kept that up until he left, or until it switched over to Colbert, was Letterman. Like Letterman and Schaefer were the last great TV late night
Right.
team.
But the big difference was obviously the fact that forever it was just Johnny Carson. It seemed like that was just the name, and now all of a sudden we had all of these different people because Conan started his show, and Leno and Letterman and all these different people started getting the game. So it really changed it was no longer everybody sitting down to watch. After the kids go to bed, everybody's watching Johnny Carson before they go to bed. Now you had choices and different selection, which is a symbol of the '90s because with the more expanding channels, you start to have a lot more choices. Last thing here for this half, the debut, obviously, of Monday Night Raw and Monday Nitro in '93 and '95. So it really kind of changed the entertainment as far as wrestling goes when it came to what was available on TV to watch.
Celebrated 25 years just recently, this past January.
Yeah, and that coincided again with another kind of like passing of the torch because not only did Monday Night Raw debut in 1993, 92 was the last appearance on TV of Andre the Giant before he died in I think it was a WCW event of some sort. So it's kind of like that old school leading into the new school when it came to wrestling on TV as well.
Yeah.
So.
Absolutely. All right. What were you watching in the 90s?
Now, to be fair, I tried to be as good as I could as far as not including stuff that I watched in repeats or on syndication in later years. Mm-hmm. So I'm not going to say that I watched certain things, even though I have since then.
Right.
I tried to think about exactly what I was watching back then, and that was fairly easy because I watched almost all of these programs with my mom.
Welcome, everyone, to Monday Night Raw. Vince McMahon here, along with the Macho Man Randy Savage. Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. What a WrestleMania just last night from Caesar's Palace. One of the greatest WrestleManias of all time. And the last time you saw this man, if you watched WrestleMania, he was wearing a macho toga.
Exactly, yeah. But now it's the present. And right here on Monday Night Raw, it's going to be Virgil and Bam Bam Bigelow.
What a matchup that's going to be. And then from there, a team of brothers will collide in tag team action. The Beverly Brothers square off against the Steiner Brothers.
I got a surprise for you, Vince McMahon. Our broadcast compadre, Jerry the King Lawler, makes his debut right here on Monday Night Raw. Yeah.
It don't look that big.
It's just a trigger. The nitrates in that barrel go off. The whole building will blow.
What are you doing?
These ties are made of plastic. They've got a low melting point.
How much time we got?
Oh, enough time to defuse it.
Yeah, well, how about a boat? I say we run like hell.
Dang.
Dang.
Until I was old enough and made the transition, probably about 95-ish, because by that point I was in my teens, 14, somewhere around there, and that's when I remember 14. And that's when I remember being in our basement watching TV by myself, which gave me more of a choice to watch stuff that maybe my mom wouldn't approve of, including Monday Night Raw. But in the beginning of the 90s, the kind of the family shows that we watched together, we watched a whole lot of Murder, She Wrote. I was glued to MacGyver, like everybody should know. The Young Riders was a Western show that we kind of watched. My mom really loved the emergency show Rescue 911 that kind of did real life, stories about what that was going on. We watched a lot of Quantum Leap, The Cosby Show, a ton of Star Trek The Next Generation. And then the only other one I'd probably put in there would be the Father Dowling Mysteries. It was like a mystery show, kind of in the vein of like Columbo, Perry Mason, that type of stuff. And it was a nun in a I don't know if he was a priest, but it was two people in a church that were solving mysteries. It was the most bizarre show, but we watched that, and then a little bit of Full House too.
Yeah,
that was for the first half of the 90s.
Yeah. See, I don't know if I can talk about first half, second half, but again, first half of the 90s, the first 5 years, like you said, there's going to be some holdover from the from the 80s and things like that. Like you already said, Cosby Show, stuff like that, MacGyver.
You better say that.
Fall Guy. I think Fall Guy didn't last that long into the 90s, but if he did at all. But for me, it's more about like what happened within the 90s, like as like the shows were kept debuting. Like, say what you will, I don't care. I own this, and I don't give a shit what anybody thinks. I was a fiend for Melrose Place, and I still am to this day.
See, that well represents the transition from watching those shows with my mom, like when I'm like 9, 10, 11-ish, to when I'm like, in the 12, 13, 14, 15 when I start watching shows on my own, because that's when I started to get into My So-Called Life, Party of Five, New York Undercover, a little bit of Beverly Hills 90210 and Melrose Place, that type of stuff. So that's really when I kind of started watching more, I guess, not adult stuff, but more stuff that wasn't just family oriented.
Yeah, for the 90s, I was between ages 10 and 19, from 90 to 99, so like everything just kind of it doesn't run together, but it kind of does at the same time. It's like one of those flip-floppy things, like all the new shows that were debuting and things like that, plus all the some of these holdovers, like I mentioned before, Sequest DSV debuting in 1993. We've had Star Trek. That's great. Other than Jacques Cousteau, I don't really remember any other military-type show or whatever being set underwater, being set on a submarine kind of a thing. And that's what was so cool about DSV.
Right.
Even though, like I said, it only lasted like 2 or 3 seasons. Like I said, Beverly Hills 90210, Melrose Place, Party of Five. Sadly,
better not forget that one.
Sadly, it only lasted 1 season. Time of Your Life.
Oh, that's not sadly. That was a train wreck. New York Undercover was a show that I really liked that didn't get much buzz either. But and that was the same type of the time that we were watching stuff like as a family. More of the I was watching Dr. Quinn, Medicine Woman with my mom. We watched Friends as a family. We watched a lot of ER and Chicago Hope. Okay, so
we differ on a lot of things. If you've listened to us for the past 9-10 years, folks, you'll know that Kevin and I, our opinions are vastly in the opposite directions of each other most of the time. So I've said this to you before, and I've said this on shows before. I usually pick one or the other. I don't end up watching both. Like Transformers and G.I. Joe. I started watching Transformers first. I've seen G.I. Joe. I've seen the old G.I. Joe cartoon episodes plenty of times. I know what it is. I know who the voice actors are, things like that. But I've never actually gone through and watched every single episode of the G.I. Joe cartoon. Whereas Transformers, I watched it all.
We can fix that.
Well, yeah, eventually we will over on Tooncast. But anyway, point is that it's a choice for me.
Right.
If I'm presented with two things, I will pick one and I will ignore the other completely half the time.
Right.
Friends versus Seinfeld. This could be a GCRN Wars episode, okay? The only episode of Friends that I absolutely remember is the one where they go see the Hootie and the Blowfish concert. The rest of it, I don't care about the characters. I don't care about the show itself. I just don't. I was more mad about you than I was Friends. My point is I picked Seinfeld over Friends because I felt Seinfeld was funnier than Friends is.
I just felt like they were completely different types of shows. They didn't occupy the same space for me because Friends was much more about the younger single, people trying to figure things out, where Seinfeld always felt like more mature, and even though they might have been some of the same ages, it felt like an older group for some reason. The ones that occupied the same space for me would have been Chicago Hope and ER. And I was a much bigger fan right off the bat of Chicago Hope, mainly because it had Mandy Patinkin and Adam Arkin in there, as well as a lot of other people. This had Thomas Gibson, Hector Elizondo, Mark Harmon. So it had a lot of good people, but I really loved Mandy Patinkin. So I was a much bigger fan of Chicago Hope. It just didn't last as long as ER. So ER was the one that, everybody remembers, but it was that new kind of, that hospital drama show that we hadn't had before. And they've tried to repeat that so many times with different shows about firefighters, medical people, et cetera, et cetera. They're still doing it today without the success that ER had. So it's kind of interesting.
Okay, yeah, ER had very much success, but ER was more for our parents than it was for us in my mind.
Yeah,
I don't know if I go on Hulu. Like the only reason why I keep plugging Hulu and Netflix's things because I remember TV shows. But like ER right now, all of it is on Hulu. All 10 seasons or however many seasons there was. You say that the medical stuff and the police stuff and the law stuff, yeah, it is all still going on today. You know why? Because Dick Wolf got out of the Law and Order game and he went to Chicago PD, Fire, and Med.
Right.
And I don't care what anybody says. I have yet to watch Med, but Fire and PD are some of the best modern day cop and firefighting shows I've seen. Like, I would put those up against anybody, any other show. It's just there's just so much. What else was I watching?
You were watching Nash Bridges and Walker Texas Ranger.
Oh my god! Like I don't care. Like I'll even admit to the other one. that nobody really remembers. Martial Law with Sammo Hung. Like, those three shows were the CBS Friday night lineup at one point or another.
Yeah.
Finally. Okay, so 10 or 11 or however many years ago. No, it was 2001. Oh, God, it's longer than that. Jeez. So there's a little website, folks, that started in 2001. I actually interviewed these people that run the website. It's called TV Shows on DVD. I interviewed them for their 15th anniversary. Website. Absolutely great website. Love that website. TVShowsOnDVD.com. Ever since they launched their website, there has been a petition, there has been something, there has been whatever, to get 1994's Viper on DVD. And Visual Entertainment, VEI, finally frigging did it. And I've been dying to get my hands on that DVD set. I'll maul it. I'll just be like a bull in a china shop. Somebody holds that up to me, anything gets in my way, I will run them the fuck over to get that DVD, because I loved Viper. Viper was essentially almost the new Knight Rider without it being a talking car, because there was no Knight Rider in the 90s. I don't care what anyone says. There was no Knight Rider in the 90s. That team shit doesn't exist.
That movie. TV movie.
No, the TV movie is fine. The Knight Rider 2000 TV movie is fine. Knight Rider 2010 TV movie had nothing to do with Knight Rider. It was just the name. But there was a TV series called Team Knight Rider in 1997.
I also do remember catching a few of these other shows only because they aired either right before or right after Monday Night Raw. Mm-hmm. And that was the likes of, I think, Jag, La Femme Nikita, Hercules, and Xena the Warrior Princess. Maybe not all on the same channel, but they were either happening right before or right after Raw on different channels. Pacific Blue. Those are all types of things that I would catch just because they came on either before or after that.
Pacific Blue. I loved it. It's Bike Cops. I love that show. I love Pacific Blue. Oh my God. That and Silk Stockings.
Oh yeah, Silk Stockings.
With Rob Estes. I remember that simply because there was a point in 94 where I was in the hospital for about a week. Mm-hmm. Reasons why it doesn't need to be, I don't remember. But anyway, I was in the hospital for about a week in 1994, and I would end up watching USA Up All Night. And Silk Stockings would be the one show that they show at like 1, 2, 3, or 4 in the morning.
Yeah. Yep. We'd be also, I wasn't watching as much TV in the late 90s because kind of that Party of Five, my so-called life section, kind of 95, 96, 97, then I kind of got out of TV for a minute because I was more towards like a junior, senior high school, freshman in college. Mm-hmm. So I didn't watch a lot of it, but there definitely was a shift in the types of sitcoms again, and a lot of popular ones that other people did watch, even though I didn't watch them. So, late 90s gave you the stuff like, I'm going to just run down a roster of them. We have Third Rock from the Sun, Seventh Heaven, Everybody Loves Raymond, Spin City, Suddenly Susan, Just Shoot Me. You had Dharma and Greg, Sex and the City, Dawson's Creek, That 70s Show, King of Queens, Will and Grace, Felicity Charmed, and Judging Amy, some of those types of shows. I never really watched any of those, but I know a lot of them were popular.
I remember watching bits and pieces of Judging Amy. After Mad About You left, or went off air after 7 years or so, Dharma and Greg was the new Mad About You for me.
Yeah.
Dharma and Greg, I watched that. I can watch that show forwards and backwards and in between. I know that's another one of those shows that I absolutely love and know to the back of my hand. When I told my wife Karen, I said, Dharma and Greg did make a comeback. She's like, really? When? What? I said they had a guest appearance on the 9th season opener of 2.5 Men, which was after Charlie and the tiger blood and all that bullshit.
Right. You also got that wave of more science fiction and fantasy to kind of take the void of Next Generation and Deep Space Nine kind of leaving. Because you had stuff like Sliders. You had, one second here, you had a couple other Star Trek variations, obviously. You have Buffy, like I said. You have Stargate SG-1, Earth Final Conflict. You have Farscape, Roswell, Angel, things like that were kind of coming up too.
I watched Buffy for about the first 3 seasons. Once they went through the graduation of high school at the end of season 3, that was like at the point when Angel left to go do his own show. Angel is another one, forwards and backwards. Like Buffy, I I'd love to go back and try again on that. But like Angel, I've watched all 5 seasons of that, like, just all the time. Like,
yeah,
makes no never mind at all. I love that show. Absolutely love that show.
Yeah, for sure.
There's just so much in the 90s, folks. We're not even covering all of it. The other big thing in the 90s was the TV water cooler talk, when you would hear about people going into work and being around an actual water cooler, not just sitting down and talking. But I remember various places that my uncles and other family members would work. They would say, oh yeah, we were doing the TV water cooler talk, and we were talking about whatever we watched last night, kind of a thing.
Yeah.
I know one of the biggest TV water cooler shows that didn't happen right away, but happened at the end of the decade almost, in 1999, The Sopranos.
Yeah, definitely.
Oh my God.
Yeah, the end of the 90s definitely saw a few big shows like West Wing, Sopranos, that type of stuff that really became kind of more of a sign of the things to come. Not really representative of the 90s so much, but something that started in the 90s, but was way more representative of probably the next decade. But some other big, huge water cooler talk revolved around series finales, and we had some big series finales over the course of the decade. Like I already mentioned, Dallas going off the air, the last episode of Dallas. Johnny Carson's last episode. 1993, you had the last episode of Cheers, which was a huge event. A little bit smaller, but the last episode of Next Generation in 94, the last episode of Seinfeld in 98. Some of these were like record-breaking type viewerships.
Yeah, it was.
So,
like the whole Seinfeld thing, Dharma and Greg made fun of it. They're like, it's the last episode of Seinfeld. Let's go to Ghirardelli Square because everybody's gonna be out inside watching Seinfeld. They were doing some game thing.
Right.
Where the crux of the episode was her friend Jane. I guess her and her friend Jane have this game where whoever has sex with whomever, like their partner, boyfriend, husband, whatever, in the weirdest, strangest place, gets this like duck statue thing. And Greg's like, we're getting that duck back. Let's go to Ghirardelli Square. No one's going to be there. Everybody's going to be watching that Seinfeld finale thing.
Yeah, basically. That's definitely funny. As far as some news from those last 5 years, kind of give you some of that too. You know, more shows turning up like the History Channel, the WB/UPN, TV Land. Also, 96 is noted as the year where 1 billion people owned TVs around the world, I think it was. So 1 billion people with TVs in their house, which was obviously not something that you could say in the 70s, 60s, you know, that type of stuff. So, also, obviously, one of the big TV events that we all were huddled around the TV, more, I guess, news related, but the OJ chase and thing that happened in 94. I remember being in school, obviously, when that was going down and watching that in band class. And then, of course, the trial took place over the next year. So there was a lot of TV as far as that and kind of like those more current events that were being shown on some of these channels. So also saw the end of an era because 90s saw the end of the likes of like Geraldo and Phil Donahue and some of those types of people, kind of ushering into a new blood and new breed of people when it comes to those talk type shows.
Yep, I still remember. 1996 from Chicago, Jerry Springer live.
Yep. You had like Rosie O'Donnell, Jerry Springer, all the judge shows that were taking over People's Court and stuff like that. So you had a big shift in that realm of things too. So a lot of stuff that started in the 90s that really has carried through, whether it was just, into the next decade or even still today, a lot of that stuff, reality TV, Monday Night Raw and that type of stuff, the late night programming, the daytime talk shows and stuff like that. A lot of that was kind of the precedent was set in the 90s, whether you like it or not.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Absolutely. The 90s is just explosive with...
I'm not saying it's good or bad. I'm just saying a lot of it can draw back its roots to the 90s, whether you like it or not. You're going to like some of it, not like some of it, but a lot of it was happening in the 90s. Especially, I guess the biggest thing in the world of TV is just the channel lineup that changed in the 90s. You went from having a very limited number of channels to what we have today, which is 1,000 channels, it seems like, and then all the different things that go along with that. Eventually you have the death of network television, basically.
Pretty much, yeah. Like, this is well, at the time when this episode was recorded, it'd be a few weeks ago, but at the time this airs, it'd be maybe a month or two ago. I was going through our channel lineup on Xfinity, and I came across, I haven't seen it on an actual television since the 90s. I came across episodes of Knight Rider on the El Rey network. And it was funny. It was not in Spanish, it was in its traditional English.
Right.
And like I'm like, damn, wow, cool. Like, but you know, you look at things like, and say what you want about it, people, I don't care. I like what I like, and if you don't like it, fine. I don't really give a shit. You look at the Hallmark channel and like Hallmark Movies and Mysteries, like almost all day during the day, Hallmark Movies and Mysteries channel is like Monk marathons, which obviously Monk wasn't in the 90s, he was in the 2000s, but like Monk marathons or Diagnosis Murder marathons or Murder, She Wrote. I cannot count how many times in the last 6 months that I've looked at Hallmark or Hallmark Movies and Mysteries channels, and they've been Murder, She Wrote at like 1 or 2 a.m. kind of a thing.
Speaking of which, Raymond Burr, who played Perry Mason, he died in 93, so that was the last one of his actual TV specials, and that had been something that was a staple on TV for a long time, because he was doing those shows when he was young, and then he came back and was doing them when he was in the wheelchair, etc. So that was a big thing too. I wanted to just real quick, I didn't mention them in what I was watching back then, but these are shows that I watched more so on reruns or in syndication afterwards, and we haven't really mentioned a lot of them yet, so I wanted to just throw them out and kind of get your quick take on it. But obviously stuff like that had a big longevity as far as reruns go, stuff like Wings, Fresh Prince of Bel-Air, Home Improvement, Boy Meets World, and some of those that I wanted to just make sure we mentioned.
Yeah, absolutely. Wings, I love Wings. Boy Meets World. Boy Meets World got the shaft on the top 100 countdown. It only got to number 50. So Steve and I are doing a very limited series, Podcaster Meets World, where we talk about all of Boy Meets World in a single podcast series. So we'll be doing that later this year coming up. We've got the first 2 episodes recorded of that at this point.
Nice.
So yeah, Boy Meets World is another one. When Disney premiered Girl Meets World, the sequel series to that, and they got the rights to do syndication for Boy Meets World, like I was watching those episodes on the Disney Channel, and now it's on Hulu, and I've got the DVD set around here somewhere, but like that show is by far one of, if not the best 90s family television shows I've ever like. That to me rivals family television shows today, if there are any family television shows today.
I thought something that would be interesting too would be to look at what shows you think best represent the decade overall. If I was to make like, I don't know, let's say just like a top 10 list or something like that of like shows that just are pure 90s, represent the 90s, are like a time capsule of what was going on in that decade, I would definitely include like Boy Meets World would be one. I would include Home Improvement. I would include Fresh Prince. I would include Friends and Seinfeld just for what they were. And then after that, it would probably be Beverly Hills 90210. Maybe Mario like
5.
No, I don't know if I would include that just because it's more of a niche thing. I loved it, but I don't know how much everybody else did. Maybe like a ER, Mad About You, something like that. That is really like if you're talking 90s, like that's what comes to your head.
Oh yeah, I mean, even the whole TGIF lineup. Boy Meets World was a part of that later, but like like you said, Home Improvement. But the TGIF lineup was Boy Meets World, Family Matters, Step by Step.
Oh, I forgot Family Matters. Yeah, good one.
Family Matters.
We also didn't mention dinosaurs yet.
Yeah, dinosaurs. Oh my God, I am friends with Earl, like Stuart Plankton. Or I'm sorry, Stuart, if I got your name wrong. I'm sorry if I pronounced that wrong. But essentially, yeah, that's an interview I'd kill for because I want to hear old Earl. But like, yeah, all that stuff is now on Hulu, and like I'm like, outside of Steve and I doing Boy Meets World. Before we started doing that, even though we had already had the idea to do it, when Hulu announced their TGIH, thank God it's Hulu thing, because hello, whatever. I'm like, Family Matters. What everyone remembers about Family Matters isn't really what it is, but it isn't. Like that first season, It takes about 11 episodes for Urkel to really invade the Winslow home. The first 7 episodes of that show are all about just Carl, Harriet, Laura, Eddie. I forget what the little kid's name is. The mother-in-law, the sister Rachel, and her baby. I forgot how far in it took them to say, "Oh, hey, here's Steve Urkel. He's gonna be the most annoying thing ever, but here, watch this." Like, it takes a long time, and I forgot about that. How far in that got.
Yeah. I also have one last piece of trivia for you, Mike, before we wrap this up. I couldn't find a great source, and I'd have to do a lot of work to do it on my own. But I was going to try to find out the shows that had the most number of episodes that aired within the decade, like only episodes that aired within the 90s counted. But instead, I had to just kind of go overall episode counts from shows that had any episodes that appeared in the 90s. So I'm going to run down here the top 10 most episodes from shows that at least debuted or had episodes that aired in the 90s. So at number 10, you have Murphy Brown, which was 247 episodes long, a lot of them in the 90s. Married with Children, 258 episodes. Next up would be NYPD Blue, 261. Then you have a tie between Murder, She Wrote and Frasier. Both had 264 episodes. Then Cheers, 275 episodes. This one might throw some people. Beverly Hills 90210, 293 episodes. I don't know if that's including the reboot or not. It has to be. But then you had ER, 331 episodes. And no surprise who the top 2 are. Law & Order Special Victim Units, 423 episodes. Law & Order, 456.
Yep.
So a lot of episodes from those shows, and most of them, at least a good portion of them, appeared in the 90s.
Yeah, absolutely.
It was a good decade. I still think if you were to press me, I would take the 80s over the 90s, but it's still a good decade.
Yep. Yeah, you're right. Beverly Hills 90210 had 304 total. It ran from October 4th, 90 to May 17th, 2000. So, I mean, technically what you said, 293 is right.
Yeah, it might have had some specials that weren't included in there or something of that nature.
Yeah, I think it did. It did have specials. It had Behind the Zip Code, Behind the Scenes, Christmas Special, Best Moments.
Yeah, so a few other ones.
It had 11 different things.
But that's crazy that that's up there with like ER, Cheers, Frasier, Law & Order. But
like, I remember specifically when TV shows on DVD broke the story of the Law & Order DVD complete series set. It's something like 20 discs or something. Or
456 episodes.
No, I think it's more.
Probably 40 discs or something like that.
I think it's more than that. Law & Order. I think it's more than that.
Wouldn't surprise me.
Series. It's way more than that. It's I think it's like 104. I think. I'm trying to find the actual article where for the actual complete series thing where it says how many.
Yeah.
It's 104 discs. Duh.
Wow.
Don't ask me.
That's
but
crazy.
104 discs for it was a 20th anniversary edition or something or other.
Yeah. The other transition that we kind of start to see too, not 100%. Not symbolic of the 90s, but 1999 is when we see the first episode of Who Wants to Be a Millionaire. And kind of that trend. We also saw the 90s sees the end of stuff like Star Search and kind of sets the stage for having a void that obviously stuff like American Idol would eventually fill. The Mickey Mouse Club. Don't forget about that. That happened in the 90s with Britney Spears and Justin Timberlake and all that stuff. Mm-hmm. So, and Ryan Gosling. So that was 93 when that happened.
Yep, absolutely.
A lot of good stuff.
A lot of good stuff. There are some 90s TV comebacks. I lump Boy Meets World as a comeback with Girl Meets World because it's a sequel series. It's not just a rebooted series.
Right.
It's taking Corey and Topanga and all the classic Boy Meets World characters and, them as adults and having their own kids kind of a thing.
Yep.
Roseanne is coming back. Will and Grace came back.
Fuller
the
House.
Gilmore Girls. Full House into Fuller House.
Beverly Hills 90210 just a few years ago.
Yeah.
Had somewhat of a comeback.
Yeah, Melrose Place, and both of those kind of sucked. Pretty much, like, I'm just waiting for them to kill Party of Five again.
Oh,
I don't think that'll happen, but well, you never know. I mean, what's Matthew Fox doing right now? He can play Grandpa Charlie. Like,
doing a lot of movies recently, yeah.
Probably, yeah.
Definitely been some. Well, we're getting into that time period where we've already kind of been there, where we've transitioned from 80s nostalgia to 90s nostalgia, because now they're trying to target all the kids of the 90s that are now adults. Because it used to be we'd get all the 80s properties rebooted and stuff like that. So now we're into the 90s. So it's interesting to see which ones are being picked from to try comebacks or different versions of it.
Yeah, I was. I think it was 2003.
Still waiting for a new Saved by the Bell.
No, not really.
I watched an episode of Saved by the Bell last week. That is not a lie.
Hey, I listen to the College Years theme song all the time. That's not a lie. Yeah, Saved by the Bell, Screech in jail. Like, that's the next series.
I want a legit series, not something that Screech tries to pawn off as reality.
I honestly don't think we're going to get, because Mark Paul Gosselaar,
I don't think we'd get it from
Tiffany
those people.
Thiessen,
I just mean a reboot of that type of show.
Yeah, but you look at those actors, like Mark Paul Gosselaar has gone on to other things. He was actually on several seasons of NYPD Blue and its later things. Tiffany Thiessen, she's done many things. Mainly played Elizabeth Burke in White Collar on USA. Mario Lopez, I mean, that dude's everywhere. Like, he's on Extra, he's on this, he's on that. I think the only one we haven't really seen anything from recently at all is probably because of her Showgirls days is Jessie.
Yeah.
Because,
But
that and Lark Voorhees.
Oh, we kind of got a reboot of King of Queens.
Yeah, the one where they're not actually married, they're just best friends or something.
Right.
Kevin can wait or something or other.
No, I can't.
No, not you, dumbass.
Dun.
You know what I mean. So yeah. So this has been a little longer than 30 minutes, folks, but I mean 10 years of TV.
It always is with me.
30 minutes is kind of hard.
Not bad, guys.
It's all right.
Your pizza's free.
It's free content, so it's like,
30 minutes or your content's free. Okay, your content's free.
It's free anyway.
Just wait till we talk about cartoons, guys.
Yeah. I really need to rethink all of this.
Then I'll talk about theme songs all day and night.
Oh, yeah. I think, we can still do that, but I think we're probably going to do something separate for 90s theme songs, whether it's TV or cartoons or whatever.
I can prep for that. I'll give you a top 50 list.
Yeah. Oh, God. I don't need top 50, thank you. All right, folks. I think we're going to get the heck out of here. Let us know in the comments what some of your favorite 90s shows are, how many times you've gone back and watched those shows, and if you want to see any of them make a comeback today or not.
I want to know if anybody actually remembers New York Undercover or Father Dowling Mysteries. Let me know if you do. You get points.
I remember New York Undercover. I remember it. I remember. It was Mekhi Phifer, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I remember that. Barely, but I do remember it. I remember it being a thing. But yeah, so you can reach me at TFG and Mike on Twitter. Where can the people find you online, sir?
Of course, more importantly, it is Optimus Solo.
More unimportantly, you mean. You can follow at Geekcast Radio on Twitter. You can also go to the website, geekcastradio.com. Find us on Facebook, facebook.com/Geekcast Radio Network. Interact with us. Let us know about your TV habits in the 90s, folks, or now. And we will catch you next time here on Geekcast Radio, the 90s Spotlight, where we talk about cartoons of the 90s. For now, I am TFG and Mike with
Optimus Solo, and it was not Mekhi Phifer.
Yes, it was, wasn't it?
No, it was Malik Yoba.
Oh, that's right. I thought it was Mekhi Phifer.
Before somebody corrects us.
Yeah, probably. Well, there you go. Thank you for listening. Until next time.
Hey, big guy. Need another car? Afraid this last one ended up in the drink.
Spike.
Look at you.
Just turn around and walk away. You're a...
Spike!
You're a bloody puppet!
You're a wee little puppet man. Ow! Hey, that's enough.
Angel, what the hell happened to you? You look ridiculous.
Get out of here, Spike.
Oh my God, Angel, you're a...
Shut up. What are you people looking at? Well?
They're looking at the wee little puppet man.
Stupid, whiny piece of crap. Yes, I'm a puppet. Doesn't mean you don't have work to do. Harmony, get my call list. Spike needs a car.
You were the puppet.